All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And David has the first question, but he's at the men's game, so it might be a little bit loud. I'm going to go ahead and ask it for him. He felt like last year, the win against UConn was when nationally everybody started to recognize the greatness of last year's team. Do you feel like this game could be the same thing for this year to really put everybody on the radar?
I think it's a great game for us. I think anytime you play UConn, you're always testing yourself against that great tradition. I think these players are a little bit different in that they just go out and play. I don't think they really look into the long tradition of UConn just really winning, having undefeated seasons after undefeated season. I think they just want to win. So they're locked into whatever we need to do to win. I mean, it's refreshing to know that they don't really buy in. But again, they haven't been the gamble, and they haven't seen those 11 national championship banners hanging up. That's why shoot around is so important. You gotta get in there. You gotta fill that space. You gotta start looking around, and then during the game time, you've already seen it, so you can focus in on the task at hand, and that is trying to get a tough win on the road against UConn.
Greg, and then we'll go to Joe.
Just kind of piggybacking off of that, you mentioned a couple times last year just kind of the coming down from the emotional high of UConn. Is there less pressure that you feel maybe externally this year now that you've finally got the monkey off your back of finally beating them?
I think there's a little bit less pressure, but the same time I say that, I feel the pressure of actually having to do it again. When you're able to do it on the road, it's a little bit different. It was easy to not let 18,000 people down in that environment. I'm just talking about last year in that environment. It was hard not to let them down. This is a little bit different. There won't be as many people in the stands there, so maybe we're in a position of what everybody else feels like. Now that they come to Colonial Life Arena and there's a couple of thousand people there, so I'm hoping it would play in our favor to not have, especially that student section that's right near our bench, to have those people in the gym.
Joe, and then Alexa.
Dawn, you mentioned having less pressure. I mean, pressure on the team, but I wonder, is there less pressure though, knowing that you guys have beaten them and maybe there's not that mystique with the uniform, knowing what this team accomplished last year against the UConn Huskies?
Yeah, it is. It is less pressure, but more hunger to wanna link those feelings up. Again, to beat somebody at home is a little easier than beating them on the road. And I just hope we're able to check that off the list and us continue. What UConn used to do for us is link those wins together and don't look back.
Alexa, and then Greg.
Hi, Dawn. This is Alexa Philippou from the Hartford Courant. I was just curious, as we talk about last year's game, both your team and UConn's team are pretty different, especially just with their identities given graduation losses. And how would you describe how your team has tried to find its new identity? And what have you seen from UConn in terms of how they've established a new identity with their newer look as well?
I think we're both trying to find ourselves because we lost some experience that allowed us to stay at the top of our games. And that leadership, point guard leadership, cannot be underestimated. Using Crystal Dangerfield, they probably, and this is nothing against Crystal, they probably upgraded in Paige because she does so many things with the ball. So they're better. They're better this year than they were last year. Obviously, they got a lot more depth. They got Paige, who's able to, she's able to do anything she wants out there on the floor, and she's selfless. but she's scoring at an incredibly efficient rate. I mean, she takes good shots. So I'm eager to see how that plays out for both teams.
Greg, and then back to Joe.
Dawn, you mentioned Paige. I guess just what makes her so dangerous, and how do you? I mean, I know you can't give away everything, but how do you plan on trying to slow her down? Who draws that defensive assignment?
I mean, what makes Paige special is, I mean, she's efficient in everything she does. Her IQ is off the charts. She doesn't, she plays at her own pace. She's incredibly efficient. She makes the right basketball play. That is what makes her special. How we'll guard her? Everybody's gonna get a chance to guard her because you just can't allow her to settle in on one person. So, and at some point, the way they play, they move so well that you're gonna have to switch off so everybody gets to guard her. I'm just hoping that somebody's able to just, make her into something that she hasn't been all season, which is not very, efficient. That's a hard feat. We just got to make her take tough shots and make her work for 40 minutes on both sides of the ball.
Joe, and then Alexa.
Dawn, I know this might seem like an obvious question, but you guys played in arguably the toughest conference in college basketball, right? So what makes UConn just is that Asia?
Yeah, she's all in my ear.
Well, after yesterday when you answered my question, that's probably why. So
I'm trying to see what she's talking about.
Oh, she played today now. Oh Lord, she played today.
now, Asia, your brother is working my wedding, right? Did you know that, Asia?
I did not know
Okay,
that.
okay.
He's working my
Okay, Puff.
But anyway, before we get too sidetracked over here, I was asking you you play some of the best competition year in and year out. What makes UConn that much more maybe special as a team or a tough opponent and challenge in preparing for them, given you play elite competition, but UConn just seems like another beast and another machine in its own?
They are. I mean, they're to what they do offensively. They're just they create this rhythm that and they bring that rhythm, and then the moment they change it up, if you're not able to pivot defensively, they make you play, and they make you pay, and that pay is wide open layups, wide open in for wide open uncontested layups. So you have to be really disciplined, like for the entire 30 seconds, and that is hoping that we're able to continue to lock in and stay engaged with what they do offensively. And then, for us, we got to play fast. We have to put them back on their heels and make them play on the other side, because if they're comfortable offensively and defensively, we've been on the other side, and that can really happen to us.
Alexa, and then Greg.
Dawn, have you seen a difference in UConn, I guess, going back to when they lost against Arkansas? It seems like they might have turned a corner. Part of that might be Paige just going on the tear that she's been going on. But have you seen them maybe come together and look maybe even the strongest they have in the Marquette game? They just were dominant on both sides yesterday. I guess in the last few games going into today or tomorrow's game.
Yeah, I mean, they're hitting their stride. The Arkansas game was a bleep on their radar. And Arkansas, much like UConn, is different. If you have to play them one time and you haven't played them, they rock you back on your heels. And UConn made a game out of it, even still. But to take a loss, I know, no one on the other side of, UConn is very happy about that. So they bear down and they get better. So, and they were without one of their starters in Griffin. So they're able to just be very machine like. So, we got our work cut out for us, but at the same time, our players are going to be ready to rock and roll just as they have all season long, and it should be a great game.
Greg, and then back to Joe.
John, you talk about the importance of playing fast. How key does that make Destiny? Obviously, she's been crucial to your success all year, but it seemed like last year Ty really stood out in that UConn game. How much does Destiny have to take on that role this year?
She does have to take on that role in a different way. Ty is a, pick you apart, point guard. And she did just that. A special game about her. She controlled the entire tempo on both sides of the ball. Henny probably has a little bit less pressure in that. Henny just has to do what she does, which is push the ball down the floor, find us some easy buckets, whether it's her or dishing it off to one of her teammates. But the pace has got to be in a place in which we put UConn back on their heels. They're going to put us back on our heels. We got to give it right back to them and not be a half court setup team against UConn. We have to find some easy transition buckets, and we got to push tempo. And we got to make them play on the defensive side of the ball.
Joe, go ahead.
Dawn, what do you remember about your first trip to UConn to play the Huskies and that experience in going against Gino on the road?
Hopeful that turned to hopeless really quick. Ages over here laughing.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Coach? All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Coach. Oh, I'm sorry, Alexa, you have one more?
Yep. John, there's as much talk as there's about Paige. UConn's other freshmen, specifically Aaliyah Edwards and Nika Mule, are really catching stride too and finding their own rhythm. What have you seen from them that impresses you that you guys will have to be ready for on Monday?
Aaliyah is super athletic. Mir is super athletic. Their point guard, I don't want to mess up her name. Hetty. I think they're now getting a real comfortable with how Gino wants to run his stuff and on both sides of the basketball, and it takes time. Paige is a generational player in her own right, and it kind of does take away from what the other freshmen are doing in their progress, but they're coming along nicely. They've had the luxury of having some other players show them the ropes, and that helps a great deal. So, although Paige is a big part of what UConn does, the other ones are getting better to the point where you just can't singularly focus on Paige. You have to, it's everybody when it comes to UConn.
Sorry,
John, I have one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have one more quick question. We've done a lot of talking about UConn. I'd like to talk a little bit about your team. Just after seeing them in practice today, what do you like about the rhythm or what you're seeing out of your group? And just mentally, where are they at going into this big national stage showdown on Monday night?
This team is one that, it doesn't flinch no matter who we're playing. They're in a good space, whether they, and don't get me wrong, we don't have to play perfectly. In years past, playing a UConn team, we've had to play perfectly to win. I don't think we're in that place now. I don't think we're in that place. I think we're armed with some players that can go toe to toe. I mean, the talent is there. Our talent versus their talent is there. It's all about what team is going to be able to execute their game plan. Hopefully it's us in longer stretches in a game that will give us an edge. And hopefully it's not, UConn being at home and being comfortable that gives them an edge. So it's going to be for me, it's going to be key that we just be who we are for, I don't know how many games we play, all of them but one. We are who we've been all but one game of the season. I know you all know what game that is, and I think we'll be fine.